Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. Tonight will be a sad show, though sad for the right reasons, Brian. We've had some depressing shows recently for, out of game reasons. Tonight we're going to be sad because we're going to be bashing the Golden State Warriors. So that'll be fun for those of us on the show that are not Golden State Warriors fans. Anyway, welcome back to the Boxscore Geeks show. I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, found most places as Nerd Numbers. With me, as always, is my producer, voice of God, man of many hats, Brian Foster. And, new part owner, right? Because I think, well, actually, I don't know. I don't know on the old stadium, the old Oakland Stadium. I don't know if it was publicly funded. So I was going to say, you're a new part owner of Andrew Wiggins, but I don't know if officially your tax dollars went to help get Andrew Wiggins.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Dre. The Oakland Warriors leaving the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum ended up in a three-way lawsuit between the Warriors, the city of Oakland, and Alameda County, where Oakland is located. So kind of a complicated financial situation is how I'd put it.
So I guess for now we'll count it. We'll say you are the proud new owner of Andrew Wiggins, who on game one looked hot, looked like a good player before regressing to himself. We're going to talk a lot about that trade, a little bit about the NBA All-Star game, and then a couple other bad trades. So what I was going to say, Brian, let's just hop into the meat and potatoes. Let's hop to the Golden State Warriors. I've got to give you credit for the best analogy that came out of this. Because you and I were talking back and forth. You went something like, is this the absolute worst trade they could have made for the D'Angelo Russell?
Right.
For those that don't know, if you're in the future or whatever and forgotten, essentially what happened, and let me get the exact details up about it. But the Golden State Warriors acquired Andrew Wiggins by trading away D'Angelo Russell. What's funny about that is that was kind of what they said they were planning to do. The full story is Kevin Durant takes a pay cut to sign with the Golden State Warriors, wins back-to-back finals MVP, is an absolute stud for the Warriors. I would still retire his jersey for them.
Yeah.
That's my take. But then decided that he wanted to leave for New York. And then even that, Kevin Durant, you got to love him, Brian, just loves pissing off franchises. Looked like he was going to the Knicks with Kyrie Irving. That was what all the rumor mills said, but then him and Kyrie Irving ended up on the Brooklyn Nets. But, the Kevin Durant was leaving for New York thing did actually happen. And so the Warriors were kind of left in a lurch. Maybe you and I have been talking about this, where it was kind of a known secret that was probably going to happen, at least to the point that if you were a front office worker for the Warriors, you really should have been planning for that contingency. So it might not have been 100%. It might not have been Kevin Durant walking up to you and saying, hey, I'm leaving for the Knicks. But it was enough on the radar that I would have been planning for that if I were the Knicks. It didn't, or not the Knicks, sorry. Of course the Knicks were planning for it if I were the Warriors. Didn't look like the Warriors were, because what ended up happening is they traded for D'Angelo Russell. And this was just kind of a last second thing, it seems like. That was the sense I got.
It was a sign and trade for Durant, right? The Warriors signed Durant, so he got more money, then he went to Brooklyn.
And the full reason this worked was, this is actually very similar to what happened to get Durant into the Warriors. So when Durant went to the Warriors had to free up cap space to get Durant. So they did two things. They renounced their rights to Harrison Barnes, and then they traded on Andrew Bogut to the Dallas Mavericks, essentially just for cap space. And those two moves let them free up enough cap to get Kevin Durant. Something very similar happened with Kevin Durant going to the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets wanted to sign DeAndre Jordan, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. They didn't have enough money. D'Angelo Russell was obviously the problem spot. It's not a big surprise to say D'Angelo Russell, your star, he is officially an all-star, but your star shooting guard isn't really needed if you're getting Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. So they signed and traded Kevin Durant and then traded away the rights to D'Angelo Russell to make the cap work. So it's one of these situations where the Warriors were going to lose Durant no matter what, but I don't know if I want to use the phrase, but I will, Brian, they lucked in to getting D'Angelo Russell because the Nets just needed to make the caps work. So it wasn't like the Nets had to trade them D'Angelo Russell. It was the Nets had to shed some salary. And the easiest way to make it all work was to just trade D'Angelo Russell's contract to the Warriors, because they were going to have to offload that contract regardless to get the three players they wanted.
Yeah, and this was the beginning of like a series of disastrous mistakes for the Warriors. And I think the way you put well, what we were chatting about earlier, which is basically they were scrambling, right? It's been reported that they did not plan on getting D'Angelo Russell. They made a snap second call, and then they just kept digging deeper, right? And now we're getting to Wiggins, who's maybe even a worse contract. So it looks like you want to say something before we move on, though.
Oh, I wanted to give you the credit for what started this all, because I realized I gave a bunch of backstory before getting to the end, very much like the very last Avengers Endgame, right? There were a bunch of parts leading up to the culmination of the top grossing movie of all time, which was an amazing movie. But the first part of the two-parter of the last Avengers movie, the key about it is they have Doctor Strange, who honestly should break the universe. We were bugging about this. The Avengers doesn't really make sense in that they're not all equally strength, right? Like, it doesn't really make sense to have Captain America, Hawkeye, and Scarlet or Black Widow, sorry, not Scarlet Widow, and Black Widow, next to Thor and Hulk. That on its own is Thor and Hulk don't need those other three people. And then some of the other Avengers, right? Vision, Scarlet Witch, again, just out of proportion. And then the other thing, one of the people that comes up is Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has like time travel and reality manipulation. So like, you should never lose if you have Doctor Strange. And in fact, in the movies we find out, because Doctor Strange reveals that he's had the ability to look through other realities to see different contingencies. Yeah. And that in the last Avengers movie, the big bad Thanos, what we discover is Doctor Strange has been spending all of his time trying to figure out how to defeat Thanos, and says that he's been looking through all of these different realities. He's looked through 14 million realities, and that they have to do what they do in the movie. Spoilers if you haven't seen either of the Avengers movies. It's come on, catch up. But spoilers, the Avengers have to sacrifice all of the Infinity Stones to Thanos, and Doctor Strange explains it's because it's the only way to beat Thanos, because he examined millions of realities, and there's only one reality they win, and it's the reality in which they sacrifice all the Infinity Stones. Doesn't honestly make a lot of sense in the realm of the movie, but, whatever, we'll give it to him. So your joke, though, was if we looked at the millions of trades the Warriors could have made with D'Angelo Russell, is this the worst one? And I think yes, Brian. I spent all weekend analyzing millions of trades, and this is the worst trade within the realm of, within a realistic slant you could have done for D'Angelo Russell. Certainly, I could have said, well, of course, what they do is they take D'Angelo Russell and trade him for like Kurt Thomas's expired contract from whatever years ago and trade it with 4 picks or something.
Kurt Thomas and Charlie Ward, Dre. Those were the two that the Knicks were going to trade for Hakeem Olajuwon. All these different stars. Those were their. That's what New York media kept saying back in the 90s. Yeah.
Because I just remember various players that were retired, but their contracts were still on the books. The Lakers had a bunch of these for a while. Where it's like, certainly there are worse trades that could be made if you went to ESPN Trade Machine that officially work, but I'm saying in the realm of we were going to trade this star for another quote unquote star or for some assets, this was the absolute worst they could have done.
Yeah, I think so. And look, you always got to give a little bit of a disclaimer at the start here. I mean, every player in the league is really good, right? The best players in the world, they're so good. Even Andrew Wiggins. And I've watched him play 2 games with the Warriors. Like you said, his first game, pretty damn good. His second game, not so much. He doesn't look terrible out there. Like, he looks like he knows what he's doing. He's definitely athletic. He can handle the ball. He passes a little bit. He's not a complete chucker like, say, Alec Burks, who was just on the Warriors. But at times, he does dribble too much and look out of control. That's just what I've noticed from the first 2 games. But, I'm going to have to be an Andrew Wiggins fan now for the rest of this season because we're stuck with him. Now that that's over with, though, if we're just trying to analyze the trade itself, yeah, I mean, it's probably the worst trade in the history of the Warriors franchise, one of the worst in the history of the league. And the reason why I say that is it's just such a bad contract, right? He's one of the worst players with one of the most expensive contracts. And by worse, I mean production, right, per minute, but stuff that wins games. So, he's fun to watch, but he does not lead to winning games. And what do you have to say about that?
I was going to push back a little and ask kind of a flippant question, which is to say, if we compare the production of Andrew Wiggins to D'Angelo Russell, in particular this season, it looks like D'Angelo Russell took a little bit of a step back on the Warriors, in part for a funny reason, which is D'Angelo Russell is not a good shooter. He can do some of the other stuff well, so I think we even kind of said if D'Angelo Russell teams up with Clay and Curry and doesn't shoot as much and maybe he does this other stuff he's okay with, he'll be better. But then, of course, what happens immediately? Curry goes down injured. Klay Thompson is still out for the season. So D'Angelo Russell takes on the role of primary scorer, and that's not what he's good at. So he's actually dipped in production if we're kind of talking Brian bins of productivity. Brian bins of productivity, for those that don't know, is kind of how we think about basketball, very similar to like the 4 factors, if you're familiar with that term. This just like if you break up different responsibilities, what a player is supposed to do, you're trying to kind of maximize different bins, so things like rebounding, defense, shooting. Essentially, we would say D'Angelo Russell is not a player you want to be a scorer in terms of what you're trying to get production out of. But on the Warriors, that shifted, and so he's gone down in production even though his scoring has gone up. He is a below average scorer. He is not a person you want taking the shots. I don't know how many times I'm going to die on this hill. I've been doing it for almost a decade as I've been blogging, Brian, and it doesn't show any signs of slowing down. But the hill being below average scorers are not valuable in the NBA, at least if you are looking at them for scoring. There are people like Ben Wallace who, couldn't shoot their way out of a paper bag, at least in an NBA game, right? Their shooting efficiencies like below 50%. They couldn't hit free throws, but he did all this other stuff. D'Angelo Russell is someone that doesn't do the other stuff well enough to make up for the fact that he is a below average shooter, especially when you factor in the fact, weird sound there, when you take into account that he just shoots a bunch. That's what he does, and he's not good at it. And that on its own is not valuable. Anybody that says, high usage players are intrinsically valuable for fantasy sports, absolutely. For trying to win basketball games, absolutely not. So D'Angelo Russell actually took a step back on the Warriors. And what I was going to say about comparing him to Andrew Wiggins, though, Brian, is they're both below average. So is this really the worst trade in that the discrepancy in production between those two is not as huge as other lopsided trades we've even seen the Warriors make?
No, you're right. Like, I'm being a little subjective here in that I think in past years, Russell has shown a lot more than Wiggins. Also, he's a year younger than Wiggins, and he also plays a more valuable position, which is point guard. So if you're talking about this year only, yeah, sure. This has probably been Wiggins' best year, so that's something, but the fact that that's kind of equal to one of Russell's worst, yeah, it's not great. That being said, they were both really bad moves, and we've talked about this a million times before. The Warriors keep trying to they're kind of like doing this, time heist, this Avengers time heist. Like things keep going wrong. Thanos keeps beating them. They're like, all right, let's dig a deeper hole. Let's do some other convoluted trade. And, it's frustrating. So I've been making memes this week to deal with it, to deal with my emotional disturbance, Dre. I've been showing them to you. So we've got to show them on air here. And here.
All right. First one is the Doctor Strange Bob Myers, right?
Doctor Strange Bob Myers, your joke about that is so funny that I made that and put it up. And and look, here's the bottom line. Like I just said after this Wiggins trade, like the Warriors should rename themselves to the Galaxy Brains. Like their moves are so convoluted. They just keep making moves that's going to lead to something else. It's like Sam Hinkie style, like. We know we're doing something, now we're doing something else, and now we're doing something else. None of that is building a team, though. And I know this is the gap year. Maybe I'm being impatient, but Steph Curry's career window is shutting fast. Like, he might not have that many more years. He could have an injury. So I just don't think they should be wasting all this time with these Galaxy Brain moves. They should have just renounced Clay. They should have, let KD walk. They should have brought in, some good foreigns and big men and made another run this year, but they chose not to. And now they've got one of the worst players on one of the worst contracts in the league. And like I said at the beginning, I'll be rooting for him. He's a skilled player. Maybe he can improve and be better. I just wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't bet anything at all on it.
So I have a ton to talk, and I'll see if I can get some stuff cohesive. So let's start out with why they made this trade. Because I think it's important to note that at every step of the way, they have defied what we would have said to do. So as an example, when they're losing Kevin Durant, now let's go way back in time. Let's go back to last season where everybody and their mother knew that Kevin Durant
We're
was
going back in time, Dre. It's the time heist. Let's go.
exactly. Yeah, that happened in Avengers. The time travel and that I was so proud. Sorry, you got me off on this tangent. I'll get back in a second. I was so happy with how they started the time travel in Avengers 2, the last Avengers, Avengers Endgame 2 or whatever it's called, right? And I was like, this is brilliant that they're actually going to do a good time travel movie. And then, of course, like many movies, they're like, let's actually screw logical coherency, throw it out the window in the first 5 minutes to make a more exciting movie. I can't fault them for that. You know, that is a lot of movies do that, right? They go for engaging over logically cohesive. So it still worked, but it did bug me. But okay, so we'll go back in time like the Avengers. Last season, where it was obvious that Kevin Durant was at least entertaining the idea of leaving. If you've seen the movie Jerry Maguire, it's about a sports agent. The sports agent has like this big recruit that he's going to sign, and his dad keeps saying, my handshake, you know, was as firm as an oak tree or whatever, right? Something like that. And it's like, until you get it in writing, it doesn't mean a damn thing. Any lawyer will tell you that. So until Kevin Durant signs the dotted line, Kevin Durant's not on your squad, so you should have been entertaining ideas. So I'm saying go back in time. Well, the suggestion we'd give there is actually the Alliance. This is a book by Chris Ye, a friend of the show that we love, that wrote a book with Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn about how companies should nurture and cultivate relationships with employees. And the right way to do this is to say, we expect to be on a limited time frame. They use the phrase tour of duty, mimicking military, to say we have a tour of duty together, right? We're going to be together for 6 months. We're going to be together for a year. We're going to be together for 2 years, something like that. At the end of that time, at the end of that year, where do you want to be? Where do we want to be? And what are we going to do at the end to help advance your career and help advance us? Which, you know, you see a lot of jobs that get so litigious in nature, you know, with like just signing NDAs and at wills, that they get blindsided by employees leaving. This is very common in tech. So this was Reid Hoffman and Chris Ye and Ben Casnocha actually as well in that book. They wrote this book to say, here's what tech should be doing, because if an employee says, I know, let's just be upfront with each other. I'm probably only going to be with you for a year. At the end of that year, I want to have more tech skills, right? I want to have learned C# or web APIs or something. And the company says, at the end of the year, if you've built us an internal web page or added this feature, we're in good shape. And at the end of that, we can give you a glowing letter of recommendation. You can either advance in the company or go elsewhere. We keep in contact. That's another thing that they mentioned, keeping a good relationship with each other. And so in the future, you send people that you like our way, or we help you out. And that's a good, you know, cultivating that infrastructure is a really good idea for tech companies. And it's funny, it's a really good idea for sports teams. And at least historically, a team that we've seen do stuff like this is the San Antonio Spurs, one of the most successful teams of all time, right? You know, they might lose a player. Thiago Splitter is one of my favorite examples, but this is a player that they brought up through the ranks slowly. They didn't put too much on his shoulders. They gave him a good contract. They traded him to a good situation that he would like. That's what you should do with your players. Whereas the Warriors, by contrast, didn't really have a plan with Kevin Durant, and kind of towards the end, Kevin Durant, some of the team, some of the front office seemed to be getting kind of contentious with each other, right? To the point where this is kind of just media speculation. But for instance, after Kevin Durant left, the Warriors were getting awards for like the best team of the decade by, say, ESPN. And they were releasing slideshows where somebody, so maybe it's just some intern that's upset, but like none of Kevin Durant's pictures were featured, which, you know, is what. So we're saying they should have done Alliance. They should have said, look, Kevin Durant, you're awesome. You're the best. Ideal world, you re-sign with us. But if you don't re-sign with us, where are you looking? You know what? We can start talking with those teams ahead of time. We can set up arrangements to try and say, if we're going to lose you, who are players we'd like to get? You're saying it sounds like they were just kind of blindsided and kind of fell into D'Angelo Russell. And their logic was, which we don't 100% disagree with, their logic was, if we lose Kevin Durant for nothing, he just walks out the door and we're already above the salary cap. So we don't have money to re-sign a player. So if we get a player like D'Angelo Russell, who has a contract of $30 million, we now have a $30 million a year asset that we can trade for something in the future. And we didn't hate that, kind of. I've kind of stuck with the Andrew Sutton principle, former co-host of the show. I've stuck with the principle from him that is, you don't want bad players on your team unless you have a really, really, really good reason. And so far, The only really, really good reason I've seen for getting a bad player on your team is if it's what is required to get a star player. If LeBron James says, I want Kyle Kuzma here and I'm going to get you Anthony Davis, you say, congratulations, Kyle Kuzma, you're on the team, and you put him on the bench. So that's like the only positive reason I can see. So getting a below average player like D'Angelo Russell on the squad was already bad. So that's step one. We would have prepared more. But okay, they get D'Angelo Russell. Step two, we would have said as soon as it was eligible to trade him, freaking trade him. So that was, I think, December 15th or January 15th. I forget.
December 15th, yeah.
Right. All right. Now, here's where it gets frustrating, Brian. I've given a talk that eventually I'll write an article about. I want to actually try and get it out before Sloan because Art Rondeau is going to Sloan. I gave this talk at the Great Lakes Analytics Conference with Art Rondeau about tanking, and I want it released before Sloan. So I'll try and get that out. But we gave a talk on tanking and noted that the NBA has unfortunately shifted the incentives, which is to say, if you're a team with no hope of making the playoffs, the NBA has increased the incentive for you to lose games, even if you are a middling team. And the reason that's frustrating is something we hate as a matter of principle is the idea of shutting it down. So a team last year like the New Orleans Pelicans that have Anthony Davis, or I don't recall if I think last year was the case too, the Wolves with Karl Anthony Towns.
I can't remember.
These teams have some of the best players in the NBA, and we'd actually say, look, that player's a star. That player's your future. You're not making the playoffs. You're past, for instance, we're past the trade deadline, right? In both cases, and last year and this year. So you're past the trade deadline. You can't improve your team until the offseason. You're not winning games. You're not making the playoffs. Your fans aren't fooled. You risk injuring your star if you keep playing them. You should probably rest your star as much as possible without getting fined by the league. You should probably improve your draft stock because that's what the NBA has incentivized with the recent changes to the draft lottery. Basically, they flattened it. It used to be to get the best pick in the NBA draft, you had to lose an entire season. You had to Sam Hinkie process it, right? You had to give up an entire season from the get-go. There was never a lie that you were going to try and win, even from day one. That was what you had to do. So what the NBA did as a response is it used to be if you were the worst team in the NBA, you got a 25% shot at the top pick in the draft. They flattened it so the top three are now tied at 14% each. But the problem now is that energy got pushed into the middle, teams 4 through 14. And so that means if you're the 11th worst team out of the playoffs and have no chance to make the playoffs, it behooves you to try and get to 8th or 7th because they've actually increased the incentives for that. And after the trade deadline, where it's obvious you're not making the playoffs and it's obvious you can't trade for anybody, resting your stars so that they stay healthy, increasing your draft pick so you can get a better pick, we argue is a sound financial strategy. And the mistake teams make, though, is as soon as you get that higher draft pick, you should actually do what the Lakers did. You trade that draft pick for a meaningful asset unless you luck into a surefire pick like Zion Williams. But, that is what it is. So the Warriors hit this phase, right? They're approaching the trade deadline. They're not making the playoffs, right? They're the worst team in the NBA right now. We'd actually say, hey, look, you should really just start resting D'Angelo Russell, trade him in the offseason, get a better draft pick and try and cap that together. And then, of course, what they actually did is they traded him. We phrased it a little differently at the time because we were saying if they were able to get a player like Clint Capela or Andre Drummond, both of whom were on the market, then make it. You were making the point that if a really good player of that caliber becomes available, and both Andre Drummond and Clint Capela are Brian Stars and Dre Stars. As a reminder, a Brian Star is a player that, according to the wins produced or points over par metric, is twice as good as an average NBA player. A team of all average players in the NBA would win 40 games, so a team of twice as good of average would win every game if you managed to get 5 2x players that played every minute of every game. So, of course, you go for that. And we argue that bigs are undervalued, Clint Capela, Andre Drummond. So if they become available, just trade. Don't think twice about it because you don't know if they'll be available in the offseason. So we would have said trade D'Angelo Russell for Clint Capela, Andre Drummond. I'm trying to think, were there any other big names that moved that we really, really liked? I don't believe so.
Oh, let's take a look at the script. We'll talk about all these trades.
So, I mean, obviously, like Andre Iguodala moved, Marcus Morris, but not
Morris.
But those two. So it's like, if you can get Clint Capela or Andre Drummond, we're in our time machine still, trade for him. And with how badly both of those players traded for, in my opinion, I think it's fairly clear not only could they have got those players for D'Angelo Russell, they could have gotten a lot more than what they ended up getting from the Timberwolves, because they got a first round and a second round pick for D'Angelo Russell to get Andrew Wiggins. So that's what we would have said. Now, they didn't do that, obviously. They traded for Andrew Wiggins. We were like, absolutely, dear God, don't do that. I'm going to refer to an Athletic article. First off, I'll thank Jeremy Britton for passing it along to me. It's by one of our favorites, Tim Kawakami, and it's an article interviewing Joe Lacob, the owner of the part owner, him and Peter Guber. It's all right. So Brian is going AFK. He's letting me just shoot the ball. Thank you. So this article in The Athletic by Tim Kawakami is interviewing the owner of the Golden State Warriors. And what is absolutely frustrating about this is Joe Lacob is kind of going off on his explanations for why he did things. I'm going to have to refresh this with Brian when he gets back, so I don't want to go too in depth on this. But essentially, his logic for why they had to trade D'Angelo Russell was to get below the repeater cap threshold. This is boring stuff. So Brian already knows this is good news. I can review this while he's gone, and then when he gets back, he's already knows it. But the NBA has a salary cap. If teams go over the salary cap, they have to pay a penalty. So it's not a hard cap. It's a soft cap, meaning you are allowed to go over the salary cap to sign players, but if you do, you are punished by paying more luxury tax. The NBA also has a repeater tax. I forget the specifics. Barry Kuhn, CBA, FAQ, a lot of acronym soup there. You can go check that out to hear more. But basically, if a team's over the cap for multiple years in a row, the amount they're penalized goes up multiplicity-wise, not exponentially, but so it's like 2 times in year 1, 3 times in year 2. So the Warriors, because they had signed this, dream team with Curry, Clay, Durant, Iguodala, Draymond, when they did have those players, they were going to be over the cap this year again, just in part because they re-signed Klay Thompson. Obviously, Curry and Draymond's contracts are still on the books, and they traded for D'Angelo Russell as expensive. So they were going to be in the repeater territory, so they wanted to get below it before the end of the season. And what they did is they traded D'Angelo Russell, but they traded him with some other players as a method of getting below the repeater penalty. And we'll actually say that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to pay the repeater tax if you don't need to. And they were basically able to get out of the repeater tax by trading away Jacob Evans and Amari Spellman. Because it actually turns out Andrew Wiggins has an incrementally more expensive contract than D'Angelo Russell, is what it is. They wanted to get below the repeater tax. But the whole reason they needed to get below the repeater tax is that Joe Lacob signed Klay Thompson to a max deal and traded for D'Angelo Russell. And this is just a frustrating theme that I know when Brian gets back is going to agree with, which is...
I'm back.
Okay, perfect timing. So what I noted a bunch of backstory about why the Warriors made this trade, Brian, which is they traded D'Angelo essentially for an identical contract in Andrew Wiggins, but the reason being they were able to turn Jacob Evans and Amari Spellman into draft picks and get below the repeater tax, because the Warriors were going to be in the repeater tax, which the NBA has made very punitive, meaning if you are over the salary cap multiple years in a row, they start penalizing you really, really harshly, like 3 times every dollar over the salary cap that you are. So they wanted to get below that cap. And so there's this Athletic article interviewing Joe Lacob that has him explaining a lot of his justifications for why he did these moves. And what is frustrating is he is basically saying, I did these moves to solve this problem. And if you dig even a millimeter, Brian, it's a problem he caused. Yeah. He's going, I needed to trade away Andre Iguodala. I needed to trade away D'Angelo Russell. I need to make this trade this year, right? We said hold off the D'Angelo Russell trade. He says I needed to make this trade this year to get below the repeater cap. And you go, well, why are you in the repeater cap? It's because you made that trade. You got rid of. We talked this a little bit about Andre Iguodala on the last couple of weeks. And I want to talk a little bit more about that in a second, actually. So don't let me forget. So Andre Iguodala, right? They got rid of Andre Iguodala to Memphis because they needed to get rid of his contract to afford D'Angelo Russell. That's a mistake, right? Getting D'Angelo Russell is a mistake. And let's not forget that at the beginning of the season, yes, they were missing Clay, but they had Willie Cauley-Stein, Draymond Green, Steph Curry, They could have still had Andre Iguodala. Those 4 players, that could have been a playoff squad, right? Memphis is in the playoffs arguably with a worse squad than that right now. So the Warriors could have just stayed in playoff contention and waited until Klay Thompson got healthy. But instead, they traded away a productive player for D'Angelo Russell, or didn't trade away. They lost a productive player in Andre Iguodala to afford D'Angelo Russell, which is a mistake. Right. And then they had to make a bad trade with D'Angelo Russell to get below the repeater tax, which they got into because they gave a bunch of money to Klay Thompson and D'Angelo Russell. So this guy is saying, you don't understand. I made this bad move to, because I had to. And you go, that
you didn't have
move
to.
was. Well, it's going. You're not wrong. Right? You did have to get below the repeater cap, but you're in the repeater cap because you signed these players. So and in this article, we were talking a little bit about this, the Athletic article. Joe Lacob is just frustrating as hell because he keeps saying, you don't understand. You don't understand. When I was reading it, I said he sounded like an emo teenager. And what's frustrating about him saying you don't understand those, I'm going, I do understand. You made a mess and you're cleaning it up. And now you're complaining to fans saying, you don't understand. I had to clean up this mess I made. And it's like, we do understand. First off, that mess was 100% avoidable. And second off, you did a crappy job cleaning it up.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I guess the one caveat I'll give is to get back to this Avengers analogy. They're in the middle of the time heist right now, right? Things are going badly. They're at the point in the movie where Thanos is right about to win. And, for the Avengers, they really do turn it around. They dig out of that hole and they beat Thanos. So can the Warriors somehow package all these draft picks they've gotten together and somehow get rid of Andrew Wiggins and use these draft picks to get another star like a Giannis or Jimmy Butler? Looks really unlikely now, but it still is possible. So I'll leave the window open very briefly for them. But yeah, it would be so much easier if they hadn't made all these moves, right? They got in trouble because of this, Kobe Bryant style contract they gave to Klay Thompson, right? It's like a loyalty contract for lifetime achievement, not based on what he's going to do this year, because we know this year he's going to do nothing, right? He's not going to play. So if they were serious about winning titles, they would have unfortunately not been loyal to Klay Thompson. Now, they don't have to stab him in the back. They can sign and trade him to whatever team he wants to go to. They could have signed and traded him to the Lakers or the Clippers, and that would have been great for everyone. But they decided not to. So
well, that's 100% the alliance, and that's what you should do with your players. Because let's talk this a little bit. The Andre Iguodala trade, buyout, whatever, a bunch of fun stuff. Our second favorite trade. We will probably loop back a little to the D'Angelo Russell trade and stuff more. It'll just fit in organically, but I'll say that's enough for now. Or we'll come back to it because I want to talk Andre Iguodala briefly. So another marquee trade at the trade deadline, arguably the biggest one, and one of the more interesting ones was Andre Iguodala. So Andre Iguodala ended up on Miami next to Jimmy Butler, essentially, if I get it right, for Justice Winslow. And this seems like a pretty good deal on all fronts. So allow me to explain the full culmination of Andre Iguodala this season. Andre Iguodala was signed with the Golden State Warriors, who couldn't afford him. So they traded him for cap relief with a pick, I think a second round pick, right, to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Golden State Warriors got cap relief by trading Andre Iguodala. The Golden State Warriors traded along a pick, either a first or second round, to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Memphis Grizzlies acquired a pick, cash too, I believe. I don't know the amount, but they acquired cash and a pick for Andre Iguodala, who they thought they were going to waive, and then he was going to sign elsewhere. When they discovered it was to the Lakers, they said, we're not letting you go that cheaply, and hung on to him. And they did hang on to him till the trade deadline, where he was then traded to the Miami Heat, and in exchange was given. He was traded by the Memphis Grizzlies with Jay Crowder and Solomon Hill to the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat traded Dion Waiters, who I believe was waived, Justice Winslow to the Grizzlies, and the Minnesota Timberwolves also got James Johnson.
Yep.
Traded G. Jang to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Memphis Grizzlies essentially flipped Andre Iguodala into, or got Andre Iguodala and flipped Gorgie Jang to the Grizzlies, and I don't understand what was good. I don't think the Timberwolves did anything good here. I don't understand why they were part of this trade, but is what it is.
I think they wanted to dump Dieng.
Yeah, they traded Andre Iguodala for Justice Winslow. Justice Winslow is a young player that we've really liked, hasn't been healthy, but essentially the Grizzlies got a first or second round pick, cash, and a young asset in exchange for Andre Iguodala, and all they had to give up was some cap space. The Warriors got the cap relief, and the Miami Heat wound up with Andre Iguodala, a veteran presence that's in theory going to help their playoff push. Andre Iguodala got a new contract. He signed a new contract with the Miami Heat, $30 million for 2 years. Probably might be overpaid. We don't know what he is yet. He's only played 2 games, but at his production last season and the cost of that in the new CBA, perfectly reasonable. So I was laughing at this because I went, everybody won, right? This is a win-win-win-win-win trade, because it's funny when we look at the Andrew Wiggins for D'Angelo Russell trade, and we're going to talk the Andre Drummond for whatever, I'll look it up in a bit, trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I called them what trades, because I did not understand why either side of the trade made the trade, right? I understand the Minnesota Timberwolves wanting to get out of Andrew Wiggins' contract. Fantastic. But they did a minor upgrade to D'Angelo Russell, right? D'Angelo Russell is not a star, and he's equally as expensive. So it's not like they did a huge save there and they had to give up draft picks, right? They gave up 2 draft picks for a minorly better player, which is, I'm not a huge fan of. The Andre Drummond trade, the Pistons gave him up for nothing. And then I don't understand why the Cleveland Cavaliers, in a year they're not making the playoffs, need Andre Drummond. So it's what it is. But this trade, the Andre Iguodala trade, was a win. Everybody involved with the trade won. And my end note was, we're all marks. Although you noted astutely back, not us. Those that don't know, even though we bring it up on every show, a mark is a wrestling term. It means someone who believes wrestling is real and not scripted. In wrestling, in the old days, there was a concept called kayfabe. It was where the wrestlers and people around the promotion, people that owned it, that ran it, pretended it was a real sporting event, and the audience pretended it was real as well, when, of course, wrestling is really more like a soap opera mixed with ballet, where it's a soap opera under the auspice of a production company, like a boxing promotion, essentially. And the reason I said we're all marks is everybody was complaining near the trade deadline about how unprofessional Andre Iguodala was being, or how the Memphis Grizzlies just needed to buy Andre Iguodala out, and yada, 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 back and forth, back and forth. We, of course, were siding with Andre Iguodala. But what seems more obvious is that the Memphis Grizzlies and Andre Iguodala were in on it together. And this is very wrestling-like, because, for instance, in old-timey days, what was known as wrestlers are supposed to be heated rivals like Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik, but because they, work together, they might drive the same rental car, to get to the next city. And it was a big no-no to be seen fraternizing with each other or breaking kayfabe in wrestling if you did it. And so when people are like, I saw Hulk Hogan driving with the Iron Sheik, this is horrible or whatever, right? That was a big deal. And you were a mark if you believe that Hulk Hogan and the Iron Sheik
Don't be a
jabroni,
Dre.
Don't be a jabroni. Which, by the way, very astute. That is, most people will know that from The Rock. That's a phrase he used, a jabroni. Basically, a jobber is a term for a mediocre wrestler that their job is just to lose over and over again, hence jobber. And then the Iron Sheik used to call those people jabronis, and then The Rock brought it into the modern Mexico.
That's right.
So good history lesson there. But essentially, it's very obvious from what happened that Andre Iguodala said, Memphis, I don't really want to play with you. You get the best. I want to go play for a very alliance thing here. It seems from gleaning what happened. It seems alliance, which it seems to be. Andre Iguodala said, I don't really have any interest in playing for you. I don't want to play for Memphis. I want to go to a good team and get a new contract. So whatever you need to do to make that happen, make it happen. And you know what? I can take some time off, because don't forget those Golden State Warrior teams that were going to final after final after final, right? They made 4 or 5 straight. Right, so much play. I think Klay Thompson made the note that he has the most wear and tear on his body. Most minutes played regular season and playoff of any player in the NBA.
That's not confirmed, but he's made that claim. Yeah,
I think he's right.
He probably is. He probably is.
So I'm saying Andre Iguodala has had 4 years of playing the most games in the NBA, basically relative to another team. He gets some time off. The Memphis Grizzlies get to find a good deal and get a good asset. It's a win-win. And so everybody's sitting here going, Andre Iguodala and the Memphis Grizzlies have this contentious relationship. We thought it was very much like wrestling, and that what was likely was that both Andre Iguodala and the Memphis Grizzlies camps felt it necessary to keep Andre's trade value up by keeping up the charade. Because if Andre Iguodala goes and says, you know what, I don't mind whatever the Memphis Grizzlies want to do, I'll play for them. It doesn't matter. There's no onus on me to get off that team. I like it here. I don't need to leave. Or the Memphis Grizzlies say, we're going to get rid of Andre Iguodala at all costs. We don't want him here. We don't want him to play. We just want to get rid of his contract. His value goes down. So both can't sit around yelling to the media, pretending that he wants to go. This is very wrestling, right? These people are pretending they're enemies when in reality, right, they're driving in the same rental car to the next show together. And then everybody listening is a mark. Another thing, friend of the show, Greg Steele, was making fun of people that think they, got Steve Kerr for saying stuff about Andrew Wiggins, right? Because Steve Kerr is like, oh, here's why Andrew Wiggins is so much better than D'Angelo Russell for our squad. And I responded going, these people aren't under oath and they know they're on camera, and they have people, they have fans, they have friends in the organization that they have to politic with. Meaning when you hear rumors from Adrian Wojnarowski that Andre Iguodala may sit out the season, or you hear rumors that the Memphis Grizzlies are going to force Andre Iguodala to play, there is no rule that says these have to be real. In fact, it's performative theater to make sure these players get their value up. And many fans, sometimes us included, get involved very much like wrestling fans, believing it's that these people really hate each other when that is simply not the case.
Yeah, and what's even funnier about this is after he was traded to the Heat, he said something like, yeah, I never said I didn't want to play in Memphis. I have no idea where that came from. So who knows? Like, we'll find out maybe in the future what really happened. But here's the thing about it. So all year, what I've been saying anyway, and I think you've been saying it too, basically, is everyone was being way too greedy with Iguodala, right? They're saying, oh, they should just cut him. They should buy him out so we can sign him, all these good teams that want him, right? And what I was saying the whole time was his contract this year, I mean, it wasn't that much more than $15 million, which he's re-signed for, right? It was like 17 or 18. Any contender should want to pay that much for him and have them on their roster. So instead of playing this stupid game of chicken on the buyout market, just pay that money and get him on your playoff team, And the Heat said, yes, we agree with you. We're going to do that. And not only that, we're going to give you a contract extension. We think you're worth that much to us maybe next year if we're still competing. So, yeah, the Heat have put together a team that can compete for the East now. Crowder, maybe this will finally be his renaissance, right? He hasn't been good the last couple of years. They have some other good young players. They have a lot of three-point shooters, and they have a really good coach. So maybe the Heat can make a run. I really love all these moves.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Heat are a top 4 seed out East right now, possibly top 3. I think they are in great shape. Okay, so they're top 4. They're 4th seed out East. They have Jimmy Butler, who is, a star, basically what's required to win. We love this trade, and I did want to just cap that point, which is to say the end result of the Andre Iguodala saga was everybody was in on it. They all came out ahead. It's fine. It's just another example of fans being marks. And, it would have been nice for him to say end up on the Lakers, but, you agreed that the Heat did a very shrewd move, which is to say we have this young player, Justice Winslow, who may never be healthy, right? Who may never be productive, whereas they have Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo playing great right now. We actually have a chance, right? We saw the same thing happen last year. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Toronto Raptors, both of these teams, were inches away from basically going to the NBA Finals, and we got to see one of them fail, right? The Milwaukee Bucks had one key play. Giannis Antetokounmpo fell over, pushing off on defense, and was pulled out of the game. And the Toronto Raptors missed a shot that would have iced the game, but they got the rebound. And I argue they would not have gotten that rebound if Giannis was in the game. I believe this was game 5. And then as a result, the Toronto Raptors won that game and then went on to win the next game. And that's why they went to the finals. Don't forget, the Toronto Raptors made it to the Eastern Conference Finals on a buzzer beater by Kawhi Leonard, who it bounced like 3 times. Like you can't tell me that shot was intentional. It was a horrible mid-range shot, contested, that had to bounce 2 or 3 times to go in the hoop. So it just takes one or two good bounces or one or two right plays for you to make the finals. And I think the Heat have maximized it. So we're a fan. And I did want to put the capper on that Andre Iguodala because, we were going back and forth, players' rights, the Andre Iguodala shouldn't have to play if he doesn't want to. And I think the very, very end result of all of this really is that everybody involved knew what was going on. Andre Iguodala's camp told Memphis, I don't want to play for you. Do whatever you need to do. Don't worry about it. Andre Iguodala could use some rest. The Grizzlies said, cool, we don't expect you to play. We'll hold your contract until we find a good deal. And it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, and one great side story, I think, on the kayfabe angle to this is the Heat did come back, and Iguodala had already returned and played in Golden State last night. Of course, the Heat kicked the Warriors' ass, as expected. But Draymond Green was interviewed before the game and asked, what's it going to be like playing against Andre tonight here in San Francisco now? Ugh, old habits die hard. We still have the San Diego Chargers as far as I'm concerned, Dre. But anyway, what was Draymond's response to that? He says, oh, I'm going to flagrant foul him. And he said, oh, yeah? And he says, oh, yeah, I'm going to give him a flagrant 2 right off the bat. So good old heel Draymond was there for it in the interviews.
So much an example of Marks because I saw so many people respond to that. And if you listen to the interview, he is clearly making a joke. And he goes on to say, I love that guy. We're brothers,
They hugged in the middle of the court, right?
They asked him what his favorite moment for Andre Iguodala was, and he said him getting the Finals MVP. But then he said we have so many personal things because they were teammates for 4 years, and yeah, so it was a funny one where he explained the flagrant 2 comment where he said, the funny thing would be he'd never be able to take that moment away from me. So he was making a joke saying it was getting tossed to just have a story with a friend, which is I got a flagrant 2 fouling you because you changed teams as a joke. Yep. So obviously no animosity. That's an by the way, that is one of the hard parts about making dynasty teams is the interpersonal relationships. It's one thing we give Phil Jackson a lot of credit for. I think Phil Jackson somehow did an amazing job balancing and juggling big personalities, because something that always seems to happen to superstar teams is eventually egos get on each other, and it's really, really hard not to tell someone who's the best player in the NBA not to have an ego. And clearly Kevin Durant had some animosity towards the Warriors, maybe not being the guy or not being appreciated enough or whatever. I'm not saying he's right, by the way, either. I'm not saying Kevin Durant had a point, but him and Draymond Green notoriously clashed, whereas by comparison, Draymond and Andre Iguodala clearly have a good relationship.
Yeah, and it's funny because getting back to that same point, though, about how unprepared they were, there was reporting after he left the team, Durant that is, that the reason why Draymond went crazy on him in the middle of that game is because all the other Warriors already knew Durant was leaving. So that was Draymond just being frustrated that he was disloyal to the team or something like that. I'm not excusing that. Like, you should never go on a profanity-laced tirade against a coworker in the middle of work. But apparently everyone already knew at that point, so how can you be unprepared? Come on.
Yeah, we're using this as a dig against the front office and actually Draymond. So we're saying they were both wrong. But again, that's one of the tough parts about putting together a winning squad in the NBA is how do you get 2 people that are top 10 in the NBA to put aside their egos? Even one of the best examples of this, the 2008 Boston Celtics with Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett, the first big 3 of the modern era. They won a title, but then don't forget, Ray Allen ended up leaving for money and another shot at a title with the Heat, and there was some animosity from the other guys. Yeah. So it's even these players that put it all on the line to play together and were lauded as being just so sacrificing in the name of the greater good. Even they after 3 seasons were turning on each other for being disloyal and stuff. So it is what it is. All right, Brian, let's talk the trade the Warriors clearly should have made. So Andre Drummond, and again, this is a what trade. He was traded by the Detroit Pistons to the Cleveland Cavaliers for John Henson, Brandon Knight, and this is painful, Brian, a 2023 second-round draft pick.
Can you see how those negotiations were going, Dre? They're like, I don't know if we can do this trade. Oh, we'll throw in a second-round pick in 2023.
And it gets better. Do you want to?
Okay, go ahead.
This is from Basketball Reference. For those that don't know, Basketball Reference and Real GM are both fantastic if you want to look at places that have details about stuff like this. If you're a geeky person that likes looking up things, and we're going to go further down that rabbit hole in a second, Brian. The 2023, so this is 3 years in the future too, Brian. In 3 years, the Detroit Pistons get the second round draft pick that is the least favorable of Cleveland and Golden State's 2023 second round draft pick. So essentially, if in 3 years Golden State or Cleveland, by the way, good bet that neither is a good team in the NBA, the Detroit Pistons get like the 55th pick in the draft in 3 years. John Henson and Brandon Knight are both nothing. This was a horrible trade. Now, few good things. For Andre Drummond, this was arguably a good trade because he gets an 8% trade kicker by being traded. So this was good for him. It does look like he's going to opt in, so who knows what his fair market value is. But what is obvious to me about this is that the Golden State Warriors could have traded D'Angelo for Andre Drummond and a lot if they wanted to, and that was available. And they did what they did. So the funny thing is, that long tirade I went on while you were off camera about all this stuff about having to get below the repeater tax, they could have gotten below the repeater tax by going to Detroit and even gotten more stuff, right? They probably could have gotten a couple of picks, but they did not. And this trade is interesting in that, in theory, it's good for Cleveland, but it's weird, right? Because Andre Drummond's on an expiring deal, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, if I understand it correctly, are not going anywhere this season, right? I think they're out of the playoffs comfortably, if I'm not wrong.
Even if they aren't, they're not going anywhere.
Oh, mean. Well, I mean, they just got Andre Drummond.
That's true.
Well,
they could start a front court, Dre, of Andre Drummond, Tristan Thompson, and Kevin Love. Would you want to see those tri-towers? They were trying to get rid of Thompson, I heard, though.
Admittedly, they're 10 games back, so it's not impossible, but unlikely that they make the playoffs. Okay. So it's weird that they traded for a good player in a year where they were just going to lose, especially one with a trade kicker, but is what it is. It looks like he's going to opt back in. This team could actually be good, right? They've got Kevin Love. They've got Andre Drummond. They can probably waive Tristan Thompson. This team could be good next season. I don't have faith that it will be, but it could be.
Yeah, I mean, you have to give it a try, right? Maybe you want to re-sign Drummond. Maybe you don't. Maybe just having his bird rights is useful. But, it's much more useful than John Henson Knight and that second-round pick. Yeah, and of course it's a missed opportunity for the Warriors, too. I guess they just decided they don't think Drummond is their center of the future. They wouldn't have wanted to re-sign him no matter what. And I argue, even if that's the case, it's still better to have him and his bird rights instead of Wiggins' contract. But I guess they really wanted that first-round pick from Minnesota. That was the most important thing to them in dealing with it. And, of course, we think that's a bad idea. They're trying to win a title. Draft picks aren't useful to them. Maybe this time heist will work out and they can trade all these draft picks for a real player, but it probably won't happen. So, big. Same with, I made this point in Iguodala, right? Everyone who missed out on Drummond, I think, was a missed opportunity for them. And Cleveland did a great job. There's just something about narratives in the league today, Dre. It's like I see people saying, all the time, oh, rim running big men are a dime a dozen. They don't have any value. And it's just like, okay, maybe they have less value than they used to, but it's not like they have zero value at all. So when you have the best rebounder in the league in Drummond, he has value, and it's just bizarre to me that teams don't see it. He's not a perfect player. He's not like Giannis or something, but who else is, right? So, yeah, I'd pay a lot for him to be my starting center, and, I guess I'm the only one who would.
Well, the irony, too, is he was essentially on a 1-1, right? 2-year deal, because he's probably going to opt in if he can't get a better deal. And with what he went for, that was the thing. The Warriors probably could have offered him a cheaper deal after the fact and been fine. But 2 years is super advantageous in the NBA because having 2 years of a player and their bird rights is hugely advantageous because it means, one, you're not locked into something like 4 years of D'Angelo Russell, Andrew Wiggins, and two, like, you're not locked in long term and you have their bird rights, meaning you're in the best position to re-sign them at the end of that. So that would have been a great position to be for Andre Drummond. I didn't read the article but I just have to agree with the headline, and I apologize for not reading it, but it's just because I saw it come across on Twitter and just didn't have the time. But it said something like, Andre Drummond didn't let down the Pistons. The Pistons let Andre Drummond down, and I had to explain some research I did using exactly what I said. You go to Basketball Reference, you can track down every transaction of a player. So for those that don't recall, Stan Van Gundy made a huge splash by going all in on Blake Griffin a few years ago to try and win. And Blake Griffin, if you basically look at the players and picks that the Pistons traded to get him, ended up turning into JaMychal Green, Ivica Zubac, Landry Shamet, who you may recognize as three productive players that are helping the Los Angeles Clippers be the second team out west, I believe, as well as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is on his own just amazing. It would have actually probably been better for the Clippers to keep him, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander turned into, in part, Paul George, who you may recognize as top 3 MVP vote getter last season. So all of the assets the Pistons gave up to get Blake Griffin could have put an amazing squad in the hands of a decent front office around Andre Drummond. So good job on Cleveland. Confusing trade, but good job. Bad job on everybody else, including the Golden State Warriors. Nice job getting the contract, the 8% bonus by getting traded. And then just, Pistons royally messed up. And this is nothing new, right? Like the Pistons let Ben Wallace walk after not putting good players around him, right? And actually, they just let him walk. Okay, so actually it's funny. The Pistons in the past let Ben Wallace walk and then turned his free money into, let's see, was it Ben Gordon and Charlie Villanueva, I believe? So getting rid of productive bigs and turning them into nothing is nothing new for the Pistons, unfortunately.
Is it time for Marcus Morris talk?
I don't have a ton. I mean, that's just weird. I don't understand why anybody wanted. Let's go with the last big name, and then we'll do Marcus Morris last. The most meh. But we've gotten through 3. So we've done D'Angelo Russell, Andre Drummond, Andre Iguodala, the Andres, woo woo. Let's do the last major trade, which is Clint Capela. I'm going to give an axiom here, which is every time the Nuggets are involved in a multi-team trade, they're the winners. So the Nuggets, let's see if I get this all. The Houston Rockets, the Atlanta Hawks, the Denver Nuggets, and the Minnesota Timberwolves were involved in a 4-team trade, ostensibly that got Robert Covington to the Rockets, Clint Capela to the Hawks, picks to the Denver Nuggets, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, and Malik Beasley.
Not Juancho, his brother.
I think it's Juancho.
Oh, is it? Oh, who's his brother then?
Oh, no, it's Willie. So.
Oh, Willie. Oh, you're right. You're right. It is Juancho. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so Juancho's a nickname, so you're all right. But he's Juan Hernan-Gomez, short for Juancho, and then his brother is Guillermo or Willie Hernan-Gomez.
Oh, I didn't know his real name was Guillermo. Interesting.
Yep. There you go. So anyway, it got Juan Hernan-Gomez, Malik Beasley to the Wolves, I believe, draft picks to the Nuggets, Clint Capela to the Hawks, and Robert Covington to the Rockets. And so let's break this down in a few ways. The Denver Nuggets won in that they were really too deep, right? They had too many young players, and turning some of those young players essentially into assets that they can trade later is a good thing. One of the problems the Nuggets were starting to have, in part with like Michael Porter Jr. becoming amazing. Oh my God, I can't wait for Michael Porter Jr. in the playoffs, Brian. But the Denver Nuggets have a bunch of young, talented players, and Juan Hernan-Gomez and Malik Beasley had been like good in the past and looked up and down, but their minutes had been really inconsistent. So it's one of these where you go, we can't really keep you, and you're up for a raise soon. Let's turn you into assets. So full marks for the Denver Nuggets for doing that. And unlike, say, D'Angelo Russell being a proxy holder for a future trade, I don't mind having draft picks as future proxies for future assets when you're not trading a major player. If I have a major player like I just said, Michael Porter Jr., and I trade them away, I go, I'm going to have to replace those minutes somehow. So if I can't replace those minutes with the trade or with a player on the team, I've left a hole in my squad. So I'm never a fan of trading away a productive player on a playoff team for just draft picks. But if I'm trading away reserve players that aren't getting playing time that I just need to do to free up cap space or roster spots that I then turn into draft picks that I can use in future trades, A+ work. So Denver Nuggets did great. Obviously, the Atlanta Hawks win this trade, and it's hard not to be excited about the future of this squad between John Collins, Trae Young, and now Clint Capela. That is That's a really strong core. Admittedly, they would have been better with Luka Doncic than Trae Young, is what it is. So the Hawks did great, and just what the hell to the Houston Rockets. Robert, we already discussed this trade in depth because we had speculated that Robert Covington might be going to a team like the Warriors or the Rockets, but Robert Covington is a stretch four that we think is being played out of position as a stretch four. We think he would be great and advantageous as a three that's oversized, that can outposition other players at the same size he is or same position he is, but is out of position as a four. And now on the Rockets, he's basically being played as a reserve center because they're going small ball. And we also think he's not particularly that great as a big because he's an okay shooter, but not really great at all the other stuff. So the Rockets gave up a productive center on a team that already has a bunch of backcourt talent to get a player that is not good at what they need, namely a big. And I think I saw some people noting that the Rockets, win games when they out-rebound their opponents by a good clip and lose. So they got rid of one of the best defenders and rebounders in the league. And don't forget, last season when they actually made that playoff push to get to a top 4 seed, because I think what was it? Did the Nuggets get 2 or 3? I think the Rockets got the 4th seed. There's a bunch of weirdness.
Nuggets were 2 last year, I think.
So it was Warriors were 1, Nuggets were 2. I think Rockets were 3. But what ended up happening with the Rockets is Eric Gordon got injured, and Eric Gordon is a horrible player that's been hurting that team for years. They traded away Carmelo Anthony, and they signed Kenneth Faried, and Kenneth Faried was great. And this offseason, they re-signed Eric Gordon. They let go of Kenneth Faried. They just got rid of Clint Capela. So this squad really needed bigs and rebounding, and they got rid of rebounding for something they already have a lot of, shooting, which they already have in Russell Westbrook and James Harden. Horrible trade by the Rockets. We've made this joke about on-off years for Daryl Morey. Trading for Chris Paul was an amazing move. Trading Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook was a horrible move, not because that trade on its own was that bad, but namely because they gave up so many draft picks. I believe Chris Paul is outperforming Russell Westbrook this season, but they're both good players. But the Rockets gave up so many future assets to get Russell Westbrook and then traded away Clint Capela. So you know what? I made the note that it's a shame, but if we're going to put James Harden on that list of greats that never win a title, which he may end up being, we really, really have to note that he has now had 2 owners that have said, I would rather get below the salary cap than win a title, and is what it is.
Yeah, and of course I said earlier in the show, everyone in the NBA seems to think, oh, rim-running big men are a dime a dozen. We don't need to pay a lot of money for them. Well, the Rockets won't even pay that dime. They will pay nothing and have 0 big men now. So they actually almost beat the Jazz 2 days ago in their first game since this trade, or the most recent game since the trade, rather. They didn't quite do it. It looks like they're starting P.J. Tucker at center, Covington at power forward. They should be, probably the 4th and 3rd biggest guys on the court instead of, 5th and 4th, but whatever. So, and they still have Tyson Chandler, but really they're just going all in on the full small ball, and we'll see what happens. This will be the experiment to prove, my way of thinking wrong, which is basically you should pay attention to Moneyball more than anything with your roster, the bins of productivity, right? When you have a team that, like you said, has really good guards, really good three-point shooting, really good offense, it just becomes exponentially harder to become better at that if you spend more money on it, right? It's easier to get better at the things you're bad at by spending money than the things you're good at by spending money. I don't hope that doesn't sound convoluted, but yeah, it's just a very simple thing in game theory in general, right? Shore up your weaknesses. Don't make your strengths even better when you're spending your money. So I don't know. Maybe they'll start a new revolution of basketball that'll change everything and everyone in the NBA will be 6'5" or smaller. I seriously doubt it. I think the Rockets probably dashed their title hopes this year with this trade.
I agree. And by the way, I'm looking at the Atlanta Hawks payroll, and they're in great shape. It's a little bit of redundancy because they have Clint Capela and Dwayne Dedmon on contract. But here's the funny thing. Clint Capela plus Dwayne Dedmon are cheaper than Andrew Wiggins or D'Angelo Russell. But they are only at $57 million in guaranteed cap space next season. This team looks great. The Hawks actually look in really great shape, so that is impressive work there.
Just on the Nuggets briefly, you've convinced me on that because when I first saw the trade, I was like, really? Those two guys were pretty good last year. They're just going to give them away like this. They have not been very good this year, though. So I don't really mind that if you're the Nuggets. Like you said, they're guys that they don't have enough minutes to really play. They haven't been that good. You know, if you need to move on, then move on. I think that's a sign of a strong front office if you're willing to do that.
What the heck? Okay, so let's this Morris trade just because I don't understand what's going on. And this weird dime a dozen point that you're making. So as an example, I already noted Clint Capela is about 18 million a season. And for perspective, D'Angelo Russell and Andrew Wiggins are both 33 million a season. So let's put that as it is. Andre Drummond was about 28 million a year for 2 years. So again, Andrew Wiggins and D'Angelo Russell over 30 million a year. Andre Drummond for 4 years. So those two contracts were there. Andre Drummond, 28 million for 2 years. Clint Capela, 18 million a year for 4 years. Those contracts, compare those contracts. Marcus Morris is on a 1-year, $15 million deal. We think he is not a productive big, but the Los Angeles Clippers basically gave up 2 picks for him. On the one hand, I think I've mentioned this weird part before. It's kind of funny because I just complimented the Nuggets. I don't think future picks are worth that much if you are intending to use them for their intended purpose, as weird as that sounds. A future pick on its face value is not worth anything because you can buy into the draft, you can trade for draft picks, you can wait for teams to draft the players you want and trade for them. So expecting the draft to be how you recoup players is not really all that valuable. So if I'm a team and I have the option between a productive player now or a draft pick in the future, I take the productive player now, except, like I said, in the case of the Nuggets, where you're saying I have a glut of players, right? My roster is full. I don't want any more players. I only want upgrades. And so if I have players at the bottom of my roster that aren't going to get playing time, I'll turn them into draft picks because I can use that as currency in the future. But I never want to I never want to count on a draft pick being worth something unless you turn it into a productive player. Marcus Morris is not a productive player. So the Los Angeles Clippers traded 2 first-round picks for Marcus Morris. Why, God, why? This is such a weird thing because we're talking about Clint Capela and Andre Drummond being undervalued, whereas Marcus Morris, don't forget, the San Antonio Spurs got upset because they freed up space to sign him in the offseason, and he went and signed with the Knicks, and everybody got pissy. And then now the Los Angeles Clippers are giving away more than was given up for Andre Drummond to get him. And, this weird stretch 4 defensively minded big has so much more value than it should in the NBA, and I don't get it. So it's not probably going to hurt the Los Angeles Clippers because they have so many good players, but what the hell were they thinking?
There's two things that I think are going on with here. And yeah, and you're not wrong. There is a big arms race for him. The Lakers wanted Morris. Apparently all these teams wanted him. So he's really highly valued. And I think there's 2 reasons why. One is he's shooting 43% from 3 this year. That's really good, especially for a stretch 4, right? I think teams just look at him and say, oh, he's just the highest shooting percentage 4, so therefore he's one of the best. They ignore the fact that he doesn't really rebound that much or do anything else all that well. The other thing is, though, he's got this tough guy mentality. He plays really hard. I think everyone likes that about him, too. So those 2 things combined, I think, make people like him. But the numbers don't really back up the perception. And let's also point out, I don't expect him to shoot 43%, in the playoffs. I just, that's almost Steph Curry level, Can he keep that up? He's done it for half a year. That's pretty good. But I don't know. I'm suspicious.
He's close to an average small forward is what we're saying for the season. And he's a slightly above average shooter. And it's actually depressing, right? He is 57.9 true shooting, which is good. But that's with that amazing 3-point shooting.
He's almost a better 3-point shooter than 2-point shooter, Dre. Let's put that in perspective.
He takes bad. He's not good at 2, and shot selection is a problem. And, there is the hope maybe we'll shore up his shot selection. But I don't understand why teams go for below average players they're convinced they can turn into above average players, as opposed to just going for undervalued above average players, right? Clint Capela was only $3 million more than Marcus Morris. I've got to be convinced if you were really after a really good big, you could have gone for that. And it's amusing that you're going, I really want this big that can shoot 43% from 3, but net shoots 57% instead of this big that net percent shoots over 60% while also rebounding like mad. The NBA still has a huge inefficiency on bigs that teams can take advantage of if they're looking for it. So
the one thing I'll say about Morris, though, is he's not like Wiggins in that he's going to – this is the Andrew Sutton rule, right? He is not one of those guys that's going to really, really hurt you. They gave up too much capital, but it's not disastrous.
Well, it's a funny one where a player that I've used repeatedly in the last couple of years as an example of this is Al Horford, not Anthony, Al Horford or Paul Millsap, who, interestingly enough, both played on the Hawks together back in the day. But both of these players, I've said, they're not worth the contracts they're signed for, but they make your team better. So the net effect is this might hurt you in the future, right? It might hurt your ability in the future to sign other players. But the Nuggets giving Paul Millsap, opting into Paul Millsap's player or team deal, right? They gave him $30 million this season to keep him, wasn't efficiently spending money, but didn't hurt the team. We agree with that here, right? Trading 2 picks for a bench player that is above replacement level, whatever that means, for Marcus Morris, is not hurting the Clippers. It was just suboptimal play. And this is a good team making a slightly suboptimal move that isn't going, like you're mentioning, isn't going to move the needle too much in the playoff hunt and actually helps them a little in the regular season, right? It gives them some depth. So it's not a horrible, horrible move, but just contrasting Capela next to Marcus Morris and the bidding war and what eventually happened for both just shows, that if you are going to moneyball the NBA, it is still ripe with opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, theoretically, all the other big men are better than him. Like, Harrell's kind of having an off year, but I wouldn't expect him to be worse than Morris in the playoffs. Harkless and Zubac's probably also better than Morris. So, yeah, it doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's not going to cripple them.
Yeah. Let's see. I got a few other things to talk. Patrick put up his returns on his portfolio. Every year, Patrick goes out to Vegas, puts some bets based on what we think preseason. I think it's a futile endeavor that just shows that the NBA is a constantly moving machine, but it's a lot of fun and gets some engagement. And Patrick went over it, and it's a good article to check out. We've talked so much on the trades, Brian, that I'll probably push off talking it in depth. But my 2 big takeaways were Chris Paul never let you down in the regular season, and the Minnesota Timberwolves always let you down in the preseason or regular season. Because for those that don't know, Patrick got 7.5 to 1 that the Oklahoma City Thunder were going to be a playoff team, and 500 to 1 that they could win the division. They're still in contention to win the division, and they are guaranteed to make the playoffs, thanks in part to the great play of Chris Paul. So Chris Paul never let you down, whereas Patrick said, hey, the Timberwolves should be able to hit their over. And despite a good-looking start, that did not happen. So those were my 2 big takeaways.
Yeah, and the one I was noticing is the Lakers and the Bucks, right? I was a little suspicious there. Patrick's theory is really sound on that LeBron never, plays as hard as he can during the regular season. He saves it up for the playoffs when he goes totally ham. And the Lakers and Bucks were just too stacked this year. Even with whatever load management they have, those teams just kind of bashed everyone. Another one I wanted to note was Memphis Grizzlies. Patrick took the over there, and we really like that. And, of course, they've almost already gotten that at this point in the season. Memphis Grizzlies are an awesome team. Even without Andre Iguodala, they're still doing really well. Ja Morant gets all the credit as being a great rookie, and we love him. But they have another rookie who makes Ja Morant look like Andrew Wiggins, Brandon Clark, who should have been an all-star, not just a straight-up rookie rising stars. He should have been an all-star, Dre. Brandon Clark is the real deal. I love the Memphis Grizzlies. I love Patrick's bet on them. Are there any others that you noticed there on the list?
What's really, really fascinating about the Bucks to me, because I kind of agreed with that take, right? They were a 60-win team. They let Malcolm Brogdon out the door. They signed Wes Matthews as kind of his replacement. Brook Lopez is getting older. One thing I was
Robin Lopez is getting older.
Made that joke 2 times, Brian. I'll let you on the same team. I was told I was wrong, so I'm happy I was wrong about this, but I was thinking Giannis might be due for a mean reversion because he had such an amazing season last year. And Greg Steele told me, nope, Giannis is just going to keep getting better, and he is. I think he's a shoo-in to win the barring something weird going on. But, George Hill, Chris Middleton, Eric Bledsoe, they're all having career years on this squad. So, it's one of those rough ones where I don't know if you could see that coming. And I'll give some weird credit here, give some shade, Brian. So for those that don't know, Seth Partnow, who was director of analytics for the Bucks and worked for them for like 3 years, left in the offseason. And one of the biggest things that happened to the Bucks when they saw these big jumps was that they signed Coach Budenholzer, right? Everybody said Jason Kidd's this horrible coach. They got Coach Budenholzer, who I believe won. If he didn't win Coach of the Year, he deserved Coach of the Year in his time with the Hawks. And that team has not had a lot of major changes since he's gotten there, but they have just improved in how well they play. Some of that might have been Seth Partnow feeding analytics, but it's just worth noting since he's left, they've gone even higher. So the coaching on that squad or player development or luck, whatever you want to call it, is what's driving us, right? If you get an MVP and all of your players playing the best they ever have, you have an amazing team. And the real question for just the Bucks and the Lakers come the playoffs is just, can they sustain this momentum? The Lakers older, so we'll have to see on that. That was one of Patrick's points. He's like, LeBron James is probably going to take it a little easier in the regular season. And LeBron James has been putting up an MVP caliber season. He's not going to win the MVP, but he'll place top 3, if not top 4 easily. Top 4, if not top 3, so I should have phrased that easily. And I can understand saying, I did not expect all of the Bucks to have career years. I did not expect LeBron James at age 30 billion to play some of the best ball he has in years. That's basically those two bets. Although another bet that he made, he bet the over for Phoenix and the under for Atlanta and the under for Phoenix, and both of those are coming to fruition. Hopefully Clint Capela doesn't hurt that under bet on Atlanta. They are kind of running out of time though, right? Like they need to win 22 games. They need to win like 60+% of their remaining games, which I don't think will happen.
Yeah, just one thing to watch going forward on the Bucks coaching is the big change people were talking about was on the defensive system, basically, that Jason Kidd didn't have a good defensive system and Budenholzer has more of a normal system there. So that does seem like a good change, and I think they're probably a lot better on offense, too. They're probably taking a lot more threes. Not totally sure on that, but one complaint that he got last year is that he didn't shorten his bench and go to playoff rotations. Giannis didn't get played enough minutes in the playoffs. So I've been seeing Arturo and some other people going off on this, that they need to see Giannis playing, 42, 44 minutes a game in the playoffs this year, which he did not do last year. And of course, you mentioned this earlier in the show, he was famously benched late in that one playoff game, which no one really understood. So
he was injured. That one is fair. He was injured there.
Oh, he was injured. Okay.
To Arturo's point, that was game 5. So the Bucks were up 2-0. They lost game 3. They lost game 4. They were up and probably should have won game 5, but then Giannis got injured. But to Arturo's point, if Giannis had played like 40 minutes a game in games 3, 4, and 5, well, 3 and 4 obviously couldn't have been. Well, it's weird, right? He couldn't have played 40 minutes in game 5 because he was injured. But instead of having a close game that needed him in for the last couple of possessions, if Giannis had played more minutes there, it would have been it. And in fact, yeah, so check this out. Against the Raptors, 37 minutes in game 1, a win. 34 minutes in game 2, a win. He did go up to 44 minutes in game 3, a loss, but then he only played 34 minutes in game 4, a loss. Only 39 minutes in game 5, like we mentioned, he went out injured. So if he'd been at 42 minutes that game, and then he did actually get up to 40 minutes in game 7, a loss, but it's like, just play the damn wheels off of Giannis, right? I want to see if I can make a quick comparable, if I can get there quick enough, Brian. But if we look at Kawhi Leonard, who, has become the poster boy for load management, right? He only played 60 games last season in the regular season. He gets rested regularly with the Clippers this season. But yeah, he was over 40 minutes easily in all of these games in the playoffs. So it's like, even the Raptors understood. It's like you rest them in the regular season, you play their wheels off in the playoffs. I think the Bucks are good enough where even that's not going to kill him. Another coach that's famous for this. So by the way, this might be his problem. Coach Popovich, this is going to sound weird, we would argue is one of the greatest coaches in NBA history, if not the greatest. It's basically down between him and Phil Jackson. And he underperformed in the playoffs a lot. And some of it was basically similar stuff, right? He would play deeper benches in the playoffs instead of playing tighter benches. One of the years they were upset by the Oklahoma City Thunder, that is actually what happened. The Oklahoma City Thunder versus the San Antonio Spurs. Arguably, the Oklahoma City Thunder were a weaker team on paper, but if you give Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook 40 plus minutes a night, that's going to be better than the people coming off the bench for the Spurs. So, yeah, basically, that's kind of in Budenholzer's pedigree, but I think very much like Popovich, his team is strong enough where that's probably not going to be a problem this playoffs. The only thing that can hurt them is an injury to Giannis.
And I think it is Budenholzer, not Budenholzer. I've been pronouncing it wrong. Budenholzer, I don't know. One more correction, too, while we're at it. Mo Harkless is, of course, not on the Clippers anymore. He was part of the deadline trades.
He was part of the anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Patrick's. I have a few notes. I have like one high-level note on the All-Star game and just a couple of comments. So first off, Team LeBron beats Team Giannis. For those that don't know how it works, the top vote getter in each conference is a team captain, and then they are allowed to choose basically like playground style, pick their teams first, second. And the team LeBron James picked beat the team Giannis picked. Part of it, why Brian? Easily. Guess who's on Team LeBron?
I don't know. I haven't looked yet.
Nikola Jokic.
Ooh.
So if you get LeBron and Nikola Jokic together, LeBron James picked much better than Giannis. Doesn't really matter. In terms of snubs and players that belong, certainly players like Clint Capela we think deserve more love, but we also understand that points per games players tend to get the love. And two players that were kind of shocking to us were Devin Booker and Bradley Beal. I'm going to be a little mean here. I agree Devin Booker was snubbed. We think his production and his points per game are enough that we think he should get in. If this makes any sense, I've kind of adopted the carnival method for a lot of things, where I basically go, as long as you are this tall, you get to enter and I don't care, right? If you are this productive, you can make the All-Star game and I've got no complaints. If you're this productive, you can be an MVP like Kobe Bryant in 2008, and I don't have real complaints. Obviously, I think Chris Paul should have won that, but I still don't say it's an illegitimate award as opposed to, say, Allen Iverson or Derrick Rose's awards. So that's the situation there. So Devin Booker was productive enough that I think he should have been allowed to be an All-Star, and he was not picked as a starter or a reserve by the coaches. And part of why that's egregious is Donovan Mitchell was picked in front of him, and I went, there is no way you can convince me Donovan Mitchell deserves an All-Star bid over Devin Booker. Out east, Bradley Beal was not picked as an All-Star reserve either. Now, what I'll say is, first off, I agree there, kind of. But very similarly to Devin Booker, there were a couple players picked in front of him that I was like, I don't know if I agree. I think out east, the big name was Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam, I think I messed up that.
I think it's Siakam.
Siakam. Okay, thank you, Brian. So Pascal was picked in front of him, and Pascal is basically getting the nod because he's on a winning team.
Yep.
The Toronto Raptors, by the way, funny note, Brian, the Toronto Raptors, I looked over this, they are one of the few teams that's not really winning thanks to bigs.
Yeah, they're very well balanced.
Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell,
Anunoby, yeah.
These players are all great. They don't really have any bigs. They could have had Jonas Valanciunas instead of Marc Gasol and been like even better than they are. So it is what it is. But it is funny because they're a top 2 seed, top 3 seed out east, and they're really doing it without a big, which is, if you're looking to a team to prove the big wrong, it's them. And funny thing enough, Pascal got recognition for being on a winning team. We don't really think he deserves it. So I would have put Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal would have been in front of the queue in front of him, even though I don't think he really belongs in the game. Bradley Beal's agent came out upset and basically noted that Bradley Beal is playing like an all-star. You're going by conventional wisdom, namely points per game. We agree. And then also said, Bradley Beal has been very loyal to the Wizards, right? The Wizards have had some bad luck. John Wall's injuries really hobbled them. He's been loyal to this losing team, and that, the voters giving all of this respect to winning teams over players with good stats. Now, admittedly, we think they're not the right stats, but we agree with this point is, if you're going to argue for loyalty, well, you don't really have a leg to stand on if you're not going to reward the players that are loyal. And so it's funny where I don't agree that it applies to Bradley Beal. I don't think the Wizards should sign him. He would have been better than D'Angelo Russell or Andrew Wiggins, though, for what it's worth. But he's right in saying players respond to incentives. So, for instance, if you want players to play defense, you've got to pay for it. And I just mentioned that Clint Capela, for example, is getting paid half of what Andrew Wiggins is. And Andrew Wiggins is one of the worst players in the NBA. So if you don't pay for defense, players aren't going to do it. And then if you want loyalty, but then that doesn't get you the accolades like all-star nods, players aren't going to be loyal. So I think Bradley Beal's right. We're going, players respond to incentives. So if you look at these things that people complain about, everybody's complaining about Andre Iguodala not being loyal. You go, this is not a league that rewards loyalty. This is not a league that rewards defense. So when you're upset that, James Harden shirks on defense or that Andre Iguodala is disloyal, just go, this is their job. And does their job incentivize it? And if it doesn't, well, can you really fault the players for not doing it?
Yeah, and it's funny because, of course, the agent probably is losing money off of this, right? Beal is missing an all-star game. He's probably missing an incentive because of that. The agent makes a piece of what he makes, right? I don't know if that's true for sure, but I'm guessing like the agent has a reason to complain there. So, of course, we think that the player pay should not be tied to the All-Star game when it's so incoherent how, it's decided who makes it.
Yeah, for a brief period of time that was included in the CBA. Basically, rookie contracts could change based on All-Star, and there was a Derrick Rose rule that had to do with if you got to the All-Star game. And I believe those have all been taken out, thankfully. But
are any players still playing under those contracts?
I don't believe so. I could be wrong.
Good.
But then also to your point, like, Bradley Beal and his agent correctly recognized that the All-Star game does help his player value, his marketing value, etc.
So that's a good point.
So when people are going, oh, these people just forming super teams, what about loyalty? It's going, listen, man, if the coaches are in theory the people that would want loyalty, right? Because these are the people that decide the reserves. If you want loyalty, then you have to vote in the players that put up the good stats for the teams that they're loyal to. And Bradley Beal's not wrong in going, I'm doing what you tell me you ask for, right? A front office will offer me a max contract if I'm putting up 25 points per game. So if you don't want me to put up 25 points per game, if you want me to get, 8 rebounds and 6 assists and 2 steals and a block every game, pay me for that. And then if I do that and you pay me for it and then you want me to be loyal, then your coaches damn well better say I'm an all-star. So, yeah it's funny that I actually agree with him, even though I think mainstream perception is flawed, so I don't think he should be an all-star, but he's right that if you're going to use the logic that is presented by front offices, he should have been an all-star. So,
and that was part of the agent's tweet, right? He put something in there that was, Beal has the most points per game ever for someone who hasn't made the all-star team. I think he specifically used points per game as a stat for his argument. And, maybe I'm a little bit happy about this. Maybe this is a tipping point where people are going to say, yeah, maybe we're going to realize that we shouldn't value points per game as much.
I would
probably not, but, I can hope a little bit. But I think, in terms of the – oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say Donovan Mitchell's an example. If you put up 20 points per game in a winning team, they'll give you all the credit in the world. So it makes me madder, in fact, because it's going Bradley Beal as an example, not – 57.2%, which is above league average. Donovan Mitchell is below league average. So it's going, if you're good at the stat that we reward on a bad team, we'll ignore you. Whereas if you're bad at the stat and a good team will reward it.
Yes.
So it's kind of funnier to me in that sense.
I mean, it's the same problem we were talking about with the Warriors at the beginning of the show, right? It's just, where do you give the credit for winning? And we just disagree with the mainstream.
All right. Well, we've gotten through all the topics I want to discuss, Brian. That was an earful. If you've got any shout-outs or final thoughts, I'll let you get them, and then we can get out of here.
No, we got that Harkless correction in. That's about it. Yeah, like I said last week, this has been a tough time for us in America. We're having a really bad – we are down on the canvas, and the ref's counting 7, 8, 9, and we got to get up fast. So, good luck to all the Americans out there because we're up against it. That's my shout-out.
Kept politics out of the show, and in part it's because it's just been depressing. So I guess we'll throw that out there. We hope this show has been a respite. I know I usually find an excuse to sneak politics in, but between the bizarre nature of the Iowa caucus and all the stuff that Donald Trump's doing, I didn't feel like it this week, and I'm pulling at the end. But hopefully we've been some respite for that, and just vote. And that's all I got, Brad. I think we're on the same side. Yeah, that's it. Hope the All-Star game goes well. I'm predicting Team LeBron. Do you want to make any predictions on? Let's just do that.
Sure, I'll
Predictions.
take Team Giannis, even though I don't know who's on it, just so we have a rivalry now. Since you're LeBron,
All right.
I'll be
Last
honest.
part.
And
You have to pick an MVP player as well. I'm going to go with Jokic. I'm going to say Jokic wins MVP for Team LeBron.
that's a good one. It's got to be a veteran, right? I want to pick like Luka or somebody. Oh, okay, here's this. I'll go with Damian Lillard. I'll go with Damian Lillard.
So sorry, who'd you say?
Damian Lillard. He'll shoot a bunch of threes. Yeah.
Lillard. He has been red hot. He has kind of taken. People are saying he's taking the Curry mantle, and on the one, they slow your roll. I agree. It's like, listen, Curry did this for a season. When people, I've seen some people in this like really, really hot stretch recently for Damian Lillard. People have gone like, did Curry ever do anything as impressive? And as a Warriors fan, I would hope you would scratch your head and go, I'm going to forget the season, right? But the season he won unanimous MVP, it's like he did this for a whole season and was the first ever unanimous MVP as a result. So come on. But no,
and he's
Damian
still like
Lillard
5 or 6 points, 3-point percentage behind Curry that season. So
dear God, okay.
He was 45 that year.
That is stupid. Yeah, I mean, people. Sports does show how quickly people forget stuff, because people are like, Steph Curry, what's he done? It's like, look at those numbers. Look at the year he made over 400 threes. Such a stupid season. Also the year Kobe retired. So
I think
is what it
Steve
is.
Kerr shot 50% for a full season. I think that was the highest of all time.
Though.
What's that?
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
We'll look
Anyway, we're getting off track, but.
All right, but anyway, Damian Lillard, though, if he does this too, Brian, it'll help to be the taking up the Curry mantle. So I love it. So again, Dre, Team LeBron wins. Jokic wins the MVP. Brian, Team Giannis wins. Damian Lillard wins the MVP.
I don't know which team Lillard is on, by the way. He might be on Team LeBron, but I'm still picking him as my MVP.
Pick, so I think it's a good pick. Well, we'll see if maybe we'll have an amalgamation correct, right? Maybe I'll get the team right, you'll get the MVP right. We'll see. Tune in next week to find out. Thanks so much, and let's do the outro. Go to the site boxscoregeeks.com for our semi-regular content. We go live every week, twitch.tv/Nerd Numbers, recaps on channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube. Subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher, the Boxscore Geek Show in podcast form. Follow us on Twitter, Dre Alvarez, Nerd Numbers on Twitter, Brian Foster, Boxscore Brian on Twitter, Patrick Minton, NBA Geek on Twitter. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.